Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the New Fashion Conservatives podcast. I'm your host, Justin Phillips, and with me, as always, is the shadow maxing legend himself, Shadow Governor Vos.
Robin Vos's strongest soldier.
And we've got another great episode for you tonight. But first, I wanted to start off this episode with a couple of notes for everyone. First, we're starting to write on the Substack, which is newfashionconservatives.substack.com. So make sure to sign up there to get our latest takes on things that maybe we don't have a chance to get to on the pod, or maybe need a bit more explanation than what we have time for. So this week, I wrote about Kelda Roys's latest campaign ploy to raise the minimum wage and why it's actually a failure in the long run. And Shadow Gov wrote an amazing piece about the Shadow Governor, Robin Vos. We also want to thank our listeners because this February has been our best month to date. Please, if you like what you hear, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and help us grow even more. We've loved having Nicole and Eric, JS Opinions, and Stelios, and the Conservative Sponge on, and we're committed to having more full episode ride-alongs. But we owe it to our listeners to do more long-form interviews to get to know candidates in the pivotal elections that are coming up. Unlike traditional outlets that are mostly loyal stenographers for the Democrat Party and journos that make themselves the most important part of the story, we know that our audience is the most important thing. We want candidates to introduce themselves to our audience. We know our audience is growing. It's only going to get bigger. And you guys are smart. You're engaged. We've been talking a lot about behind the scenes to have more interviews on, and I'm here to say it on the pod so you know how seriously we're taking it and committing to delivering excellent content and giving Republican candidates a chance to introduce themselves and amplify their message. So with that, Shadow Gov, we got to get into it. The Vice President was in Wisconsin this week. He visited Pointe Precision, a manufacturing facility in Plover, Wisconsin, as part of this post-State of the Union tour to promote Trump's administrative economic agenda. He was joined by DVO. Vance spoke to a crowd of about 300, emphasizing affordability, reducing government fraud, and supporting American manufacturing while criticizing Democrats as crazy and urging voters to keep Republicans in power in the midterms. But there's one thing that stood out to me. I want to play this clip that I think it was originally shared by Representative Ned Wesky, but it is of JD taking some questions, or taking one question in particular during his appearance.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Matt Smith from WISN TV in Milwaukee. On the fraud efforts and what we saw in Minnesota yesterday, here in Wisconsin, the governor has refused to give over the SNAP data here in the state, along with the voter data. I'm curious, is there a point, or at what point would the administration withhold federal funds from Wisconsin?
Well, look, we're going to look at every option that we have because we've got to stop this terrible fraud, but that is absurd. Ask yourself a question. Why would the government of Wisconsin not want to help us kick fraud off of the welfare rolls and kick fraud off of the voter rolls? And the only answer I can possibly come up with is because they like to cheat. There's no other real explanation. Now, the governor might say, in fact, I'm sure the governor would say this. Let me just be charitable to those who disagree with us. The governor would say, well, there isn't as much fraud as the Trump administration believes there is. Well, even if that's true, and it's not, but even if that's true, let's get what fraud there is off the voter rolls and off the welfare rolls. You know the right number of people who should be illegally voting in American elections? 0. You know the number of people who should be fraudulently collecting food stamps? 0. I want those benefits to exist for the people who need them. The only way to promise that is to get the fraud out of the system, and that's what we're trying to do in the Trump administration.
Man, JD is just the perfect vessel to deliver that message, and I think he's absolutely right. Like, Evers did come out and say, well, there's not that much fraud, so it really doesn't matter.
Well, I think JD Vance is a great orator, and he speaks kind of plainly. It's a good blend of course, like being very plainful language, but forceful, but professional. He's obviously educated, but he still has a great, that kind of a blue collar upbringing per se. And so you take this amalgamation and you get this message that comes out, and it's like, wow, okay. Obviously Trump is Trump. No one will ever be Trump. No one should ever try to be Trump. You should be unique. And JD's got a very good way of messaging. So he very easily just, says that, no, we don't want any more fraud in Wisconsin. We don't want any more fraud, in the United States, period. And, I think we had even mentioned this a couple months ago, just saying, why keep Why keep the data? And I think partially, if Evers was being honest, I really don't think they want to give up data on potential illegals.
Sure.
To get the illegals deported, because you could make a case, even though they're not asking for, they're not asking for illegals or like data on illegals. Well, because they're undocumented, so there is no data, but there has to be. You just know that there's at least some illegals. I mean, it might not be many. You're right. There might not be many. Do I think Minnesota's systems are as blatantly broken, or Wisconsin's systems are as blatantly broken as Minnesota? No. I actually tend to agree with the governor a little bit. Don't hear what I'm saying. Don't hear what I'm not saying. What the difference between Minnesota and Wisconsin is an actual swing state, and Minnesota has become kind of swingy. It's not a swingy, obviously, as far as nationally, but like the legislature does have swings back and forth. And it's easier to get away with stuff when you have one-party control. I mean, California, for example. I mean, there's no oversight in California.
Right. They're still building a $1 billion train that's
to nowhere.
Yeah, cost overruns and all that. And you're right. I think there's something in that population in Minnesota that's more apt to commit fraud, and because it's part of their culture. Quite frankly,
it's part of the pirates' culture. So I mean, that makes total sense. But in Wisconsin, there is enough of the push-pull tension that, to get away with something so blatant, you feel like would probably be exposed. There are enough patriots, behind enemy lines to expose, what's going on. And there's enough, like I said, healthy tension that, Democrats can't get away with murder, proverbially speaking. So it's probably not as bad, but that still doesn't mean that you get to hide it all. So just simply, if there's nothing, it's like, trust but verify,
100%.
That's all. Parents raising their kids. You didn't steal a cookie. Yeah, I believe you, but let's check your pockets. Okay, no big deal. I believe you, but let's just check your pockets. No big deal.
You went with cookies, and I was thinking, let's just check the vodka bottle and see if it's water, if it's still got any alcohol in it.
See, I was of the belief, okay, sure, if you want to. If your dad wants to give you a beer or something, no big deal. You can have a taste, whatever. But stealing vodka and replacing it with water, degenerate behavior. Oh, we're going to go to so-and-so's house and drink Mike's Hard Lemonade in the basement before the mom gets home from work at 5:30. I'm sorry, but that's lame. That was lame. Maybe it's just me.
You're talking about my childhood. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But yeah, no, the point being is it's good message. And obviously, he was in DVO's district, mixing a little politicking with a little bit of, bringing the VP in, maybe it also counts as introducing the VP to more Wisconsin voters, maybe a 2028 thing. There's multiple, uses for this stop. So, but yeah, it was good to see him. And actually Matt Smith,
Good question.
Yep. Good question. Which I don't want to say he's always been good, but certainly there's a tier, and he is up in the higher echelons of media.
Necessarily when I call the journos, the dutiful stenographers of the Democratic
Party. I don't consider
Party,
him one.
Yeah. He might actually.
He does push back on Republicans and Democrats for things, and he'll offer, the follow-up questions. And it's not just here's the one underhanded question, and just kind of run with that. I won't ask any follow-ups. So.
Right.
Yeah, good question.
Now, the other big story we have to talk about, Shadow Gov, you have to be excited about this one. So, dropping late Friday from J.R. Ross over at WisPolitics, Elections Commission recommends charges against 13 involved in failed Vos recall. So, Wisconsin Election Commission recommended these charges for 13 people who were involved, but found insufficient evidence that the lead organizer in the recall had violated the law. So, Shadow Gov, your thoughts on Robin Vos adding more skulls to his throne?
Even in the, one foot in retirement, 1 foot still in the legislature, still having an impact. What other legislature said, or what other legislator can say that, his actions have resulted in people potentially going to jail? Or, I don't know what the charge, or I should say, I don't know what the punishment is for the charges. I can't imagine they're probably that big. But this is unlocking a memory in my brain that I kind of forgot I had. The recall scene, what was that? Was it 2023?
Would have been 24.
No.
Yeah.
No,
because you have to be in office for one whole year before you're allowed to be recalled. And that's what's still stupid about trying to recall any member of the assembly, regardless of
because they're up for
leadership.
reelection right away.
Yeah, because you're basically running 2 elections.
That's right. That's right. Although I do appreciate, because then the recall rules are, when you're getting recalled, you're allowed to raise unlimited funds. Which the most prolific fundraiser in the state currently gets to fundraise as much as humanly possible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dumb.
Exactly.
Very dumb. And of course, they broke the law to try to, if you're going to break the law, you at least have to maybe, accomplish something. But they accomplished nothing except for getting themselves in hot water.
And so where these folks went, and I'm looking at the letter that we'll link to in the show notes. It's from the Wisconsin Election Commission. It goes to Robin Vos, Matthew Snorek, and several people who are not from Wisconsin. Far west is Long Beach, California, far south as Lake Worth, Florida, and Coconut Creek, Florida. But a lot of the people involved with this weren't actually Wisconsin residents. So they found that the complaints against several of those recommended for charges was because they submitted recall petitions that weren't the recall signatures that falsely listed an address, and other ones who blatantly forged signatures for the recall petition. And we know that from a good friend of the show, Sam Whalen, who pointed out that someone had signed his name to it. And he's a Vos guy. He's a good guy, and someone who's been kicked around as a potential candidate for office in the near future. But he was the one who called it out a while ago. And so, now the Wisconsin Election Commission has reached the conclusion of their investigation, and thankfully, hopefully there's some actual charges that come from this. I know there's some good DAs in Racine and Kenosha County that may be getting involved in this. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very happy. There's nothing. I just wish that Adrienne Melby was one of them. That's all I really could hope for. And unfortunately, I don't think she was, mainly because she probably has enough legal problems as it is, trying to sue Peter, the weird election dude who makes up stuff out of thin air. Regardless, I've been on an absolute heater on X, Twitter, the Bird app, whatever you want to call it. Love that Grok allows you to animate photos. Fantastic work is being done
of Robin Vos lightning a celebration dart.
I just, there's something now for those that aren't on X, or those that aren't on X and should be on X and should be following us and the podcast, I highly recommend it. But there are just some great photos of the speaker, and I've been known to post a number of edits with him in it, go figure. And yeah, for those that don't know, I'm the only one that makes Robin Vos edits. So if you see one, I made it. But the point being is I took a photo of the speaker in his, little speaker chair, which is a big speaker chair. Yeah. And, I may have told Grok to put a cigarette in his mouth and give him a lighter, and he's lighting up a cigarette, and he's got Ray-Bans on. Yeah. And then I had Grok animate it. And it was perfect. Blowing the smoke, man, it's good stuff. AI,
maybe Robin,
dry up Lake Michigan, but I get edits of Robin Vos.
Maybe Robin actually had some sort of celebration like that, because that's a great mic drop for him on his way out the door to stick it once more to the people that tried to come at him and missed.
Yeah, I hope he's having a drink in celebration.
So another issue that came up this week that I think caught a lot of folks by surprise was from Representative Sylvia Ortiz-Velez, who was charged with disorderly conduct, which I think is a retaliation for, as the Democrats would call it, straying too far from the plantation. So she was charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct on February 25th, stemming from an August 2025 dispute over drafting resolutions for Hispanic Heritage Month. Ortiz-Velez denied making threats, calling related comments poorly worded hyperbole, and claiming charges are retaliatory, citing years of unacceptable and very vicious, vile, and cruel mistreatment by caucus members that leadership allowed amid her history of breaking ranks to vote with Republicans. Accusations were deemed to be not criminal by the Capitol Police Deputy Chief Christopher Litzkow. Ortiz-Velez publicly embarrassed fellow Dems during a recent legislative session day by confirming what Republicans know, that Neubauer regularly bans members from voting on measures when they were likely to vote with Republicans. So let's play that video, which is of Representative Nate Gustafson asking a question of Representative Ortiz-Velez.
Representative from the 55th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Real quick, I'd like to ask the gentle lady from the 8th if she'd yield to a question.
Would the representative from the 8th yield to a question? Is that yes or no?
I will, Mr. Speaker.
Representative from the 8th will yield to a question.
The question
from the 55th.
The question is, has the gentle lady from the 8th ever been told to get off the floor and not vote for her district?
Representative from the 8th. Representative from the 8th.
The answer is yes, Mr. Speaker.
So right there was a little back and forth. So you hear three voices. That's Nate Gustafson, Kevin Peterson, who is at that moment serving
Speaker
as the
pro
speaker,
tem.
and then the Representative Ortiz-Velez. And so he asks the question. And when a legislator asks if a member will yield to a question, it's usually a troll or a gotcha moment. And the representative that's being asked the question usually refuses to yield and refuses to answer any question. But in this case,
She allows it.
She allows it and answers the
She
question.
knows what's
Yeah.
coming. She knows exactly
Right,
what's coming.
Right. And yeah, the Democrats clearly have made a mountain out of a molehill to embarrass and retaliate against the representative for, again, straying too far from the Democrat plantation. And you know how that goes with Representative Neubauer and how she handles that.
Well, so a couple things. We obviously talked about the other representative that was told to leave the floor last week. Now we've also, we've done a lot of podcasts, so I can't remember exactly which ones we've talked about and which we haven't. But I believe we've also talked about how Representative Ortiz-Velez has also been forced off the floor for just wanting to vote with Republicans.
Yeah.
Because then the Democrats would rather deny 55,000 to 60,000 people's votes in the legislature. They would rather deny their vote to make sure that the Republicans don't have the talking point of having bipartisan legislation on X, Y, or Z. Okay, that sounds really petty, and it is. It is petty. But that's how far the Democrats go to try not to be, quote unquote, embarrassed, where they're trying to, this is subverting democracy, if you will.
Yep.
Okay. Now, you might not agree with, I'm sure the Republican caucus doesn't agree with themselves on everything. I think that's probably clear based off of a lot of stuff that happened in the last couple of weeks regarding the postpartum Medicare expansion bill. I'm sure there
were several bills
at
at that very end that I know were objected to, even though, again, the Republicans had majority. Exactly.
But you know what? For example, Representative Sortwell voted no on the postpartum Medicaid. He was the only no vote, but they didn't force him off the floor.
Right.
Because there were other Republicans that voted no. The Republicans don't do that. The shadow governor, the Democrats like to paint him as this, iron-fisted, bullies everybody into doing what he wants. And I'm sure that he does do what he wants for the most part, but I don't think any Republican has ever come out and said, "Oh, I was bullied into voting this way for whatever reason." Maybe because he's actually a consensus builder. He actually can convince people and say, "Guys, I have an opinion. Let me tell you what I think about it." And then maybe there are discussions from there. Well, on the Democrat side, it's quite literally just bully bull politics. So this is just another example of that, of course. And I'm sure the Democrats would love for her to go away. And conveniently, in the Journal Sentinel article that was talking about this disorderly conduct charge, they had a comment not only from her primary opponent. Very convenient. The primary opponent was so readily available for comment. So I think that shows exactly who we're going up against. These people, they want her out. She's a problem, and that's why we are not going to endorse her, because she's in the Democrat primary and that would hurt her.
Yeah, that's
I could see that would be really funny if we jokingly endorse her, like we endorsed MAGA patriot Sarah Rodriguez. But if we were to endorse Representative Ortiz-Velez. I don't remember the name.
They're going to turn that
conservative podcast endorses Sylvia Ortiz-Velez. Like, no, we're not doing.
They're going to turn that into an oppo piece. 100%.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And if you, whatever Democrat slimy consultants listening right now, potentially, I will sue you.
But no, it is true. And it's something that we talked about again on our last pod, which is almost exclusively about the life, career, and skills of Robin Vos. He has allowed members,
Mr. Speaker to you.
For a couple more months.
Yeah.
So he does allow members to take no votes or vote against the majority. It's something, he respects the opinions of all his members. Whereas again, if you're not in lockstep 100% with the Democrat caucus, you're ushered off the floor. You're given leave for the remainder of the day. And this is Sylvia Ortiz-Velez is not the first one that this has happened to. Like they've done it to Jason Fields, who was a black Democrat from Milwaukee who understood the value that school choice brings to his community, wanted to vote for it, and of course, get him off the floor. Primary him out. I think that's actually. Now we're gonna have to look this up. I might be misspeaking. We'll have to fact check. I think that's how Mandela got in. I think that was his seat. But
I guess I didn't realize that. Well, they also did this with Representative Ortiz-Velez's friend, Representative Cabrera.
Yeah.
So a lot of this started, I think, for at least Representative Ortiz-Velez back under when they were having the map discussion. Now, for those, because this is definitely before the time of the podcast, we're talking to the 2021. It would have been 2021 when they were doing the maps. Yes. Boy, that's 4 years ago.
I know.
5 years ago at this point. So 2021, they were doing the new maps that were supposed to last for the entire decade. But then, of course, we got the recent redraws. And during then, the Evers administration had put together the quote unquote People's Map Commission, which is just a very soft, consultant run name to basically say, yeah, this is just our hack group that is going to put together a Democrat gerrymander. And the Democrat gerrymander was so bad that there were a number of Democrats that voted against it. Okay. And publicly and did floor speeches saying, we don't like these bills. Because what he did was this is what Democrats have to do. They have to dilute the vote of their other Democrat seats to make other seats more competitive. I mean, it's just math. There's a finite amount of voters. They have to take votes from somewhere. Well, they were taking votes from the Hispanic districts on the south side of Milwaukee. They were taking the black districts. They were taking votes away from them and diluting their vote as well. And they hated that. So they publicly came out against it. And they voted it down, and it was kind of an embarrassment for Tony and the whole People's Map Commission. So that's how it started. And I think that's always kind of grinded on Democrats' gears a little bit. And now it's just gotten so bad that she doesn't even, caucus with the Democrats.
Right. And unfortunately, that's probably close to her end of the time as a legislator. I hope she fights through it.
I hope she wins.
Yeah.
That's not an endorsement.
I hear you. And hopefully everyone else listening is not going to put that on a direct mail piece for their opponent.
I would love if a Republican won that district.
Of course.
That's just
as with all 98 other districts.
Yes, I hope there are 99 Republicans in the Assembly and 33 senators in
that are Republican.
That's what I want to. That's the unified control I want.
Well, we should talk about the Marquette Law poll that was released recently that gave us a look at the Supreme Court race, the Democrat primary for governor, and gave us some issue and policy polling. So top line in this Marquette Law poll found that in the upcoming 2026 Wisconsin Supreme Court election, 66% of registered voters remain undecided, with liberal judge Chris Taylor leading conservative judge Maria Lazar 17% to 12% among those who have decided. Name recognition is low for both candidates, with 77% of voters saying they haven't heard enough about Lazar and 74% about Taylor. So is still an opportunity for Maria Lazar to gain some ground there. It's probably not as over as a lot of folks were calling it. Still an uphill battle for her, but being Chris Taylor, I see her ads. I
Yep.
see Waukesha County Democrat Party ads, and I love seeing those, quite frankly, because that means their micro-targeting is bad. And they think I'm, someone who could be persuaded. So I like seeing those. But with that, she's been running a lot more ads than Maria, and for not having that much difference between the two and still having that much,
Well, this I think just goes to show that the dramatic decrease in spending. I mean, we're going to go from a $100 million Supreme Court raise to
probably a tenth of that. Yeah.
Yeah. We might be maybe $10 million. And that's a maybe. Who knows? I mean, we still got some time. March is going to be long.
Yep.
And between now and middle of March, that's when the race is going to be won.
Yep.
So if you're Maria Lazar, spend all your money. Basically, once March hits in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Digital ads.
And then, of course, when early voting starts, you just got to blast the airwaves. But it does show that, because of the lack of spending, no one knows that there's an election.
Yeah.
And there is potential. The problem is there a message there that you can grapple or grab onto and use? And I think there is. And there are some talking points against Chris Taylor. I think looking at Chris Taylor, I think she's the weakest of the of the female politicians that have all run for the Supreme Court. Janet Protasiewicz, Susan Crawford, Chris Taylor. Because Chris Taylor was literally a politician. She's got votes. She's got a record. She's got co-sponsorships that she's signed on to. There are bills. There are things that you can, stretch the truth on a little bit,
and you don't need,
still be.
But you
true.
You don't need to with her. She's that progressive.
Well, yeah.
She Representative Madison. Like, she was 100% dyed in the wool Democrat, socialist, communist, progressive wacko. Like, it's all right there. So hopefully that campaign.
And I might be a slightly biased here, but there's some stuff on illegal immigration. There's stuff on not protecting sexual assault victims. There's some decent stuff there. The only real attack against Maria right now is abortion.
Yeah, right.
Which, wow, what are we on? Year 4 of abortion messaging.
Yep.
At some point, it's going to get tired, but they're not. They're going to ride that, ride till
as they can. And I think the Dems are trying to run back the 2012 War on Women playbook. I don't think it's going to work. I think voters, again, are tired of that. They might be more discerning.
It's still going to work a little bit. Though.
It always will, but I think it has to be. You have to have the right circumstances nationally to get that to work, and maybe it happens. Probably doesn't.
The point being, though, is if Maria Lazar had a injection of funds.
Yes.
But along with that, you have to have a reason for people to donate, which means you have to have a message. There are messages out there. I just think you have to have the ability to be able to grab onto that message and actually tell voters, and according to the Marquette Law poll, more people want to hear about the issues. So,
yep. So another part of that poll that's real interesting. Democrat primary for governor, while 65% are undecided. State representative, Democrat socialist endorsed Francesca Hong is at 11%. Former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is at 10%. Lieutenant Governor Sarah Russell Rodriguez is at 6%. All other candidates in the poll are below 5%. Favorability ratings for governor candidates are generally low, but most have having negative nets and high haven't heard of yet, with Barnes at 61% name ID, but net -7. So I think the negatives on that one, that's a bigger deal to me. And that's, I think, a bigger alarm for the Democrats, that Barnes has 61% name ID. He's a -7 in approval, and is at 10% in this poll. Like,
yikes.
Yep.
That's a big yikes. If you're Mandela Barnes, this has got to be like nuclear alarms going off.
Get off the ice.
Yeah, get off the ice. For those that don't know, Mandela was doing some interview where he popped a lawn chair on the ice and tried to appropriate our culture of ice fishing, even though they didn't even ice fish. They were just on.
He was
the ice.
that's probably the best way for him to get away from the ratchets.
Yeah, that's true. Also, it's probably best if you just stay away from like other reporters, mainly because they'll just assault them usually.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's all. There's also that. But first of all, Francesca Hong being at 11% and Mandela Barnes at 10%, can they legally be that close? Even like with polling, like there's that question to be had. Also, Mandela's apparently copying Francesca's outfit.
Yeah.
They're both wearing Jordans, the beanies, the kind of baggy, sweatshirt, quarter zip, stuff like that. So the race has gotten extremely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And as I put on Twitter, Francesca Hong is leading in a second poll.
Yeah.
Not just one, we have two.
I know the Bush meme.
Yeah,
that was
sir.
Clutch.
They've hit the second tower.
Yeah,
no, the second pole has dropped. Yeah, this is, and of course, everyone's going to say, well, 65% are undecided.
Mm-hmm.
It's true, but all you need is just a little bit of oxygen. If you're Francesca Hong, she doesn't need much. She's working hard. I'm seeing the people that are canvassing for her.
Yeah, this is the biggest.
She's got a movement.
And the biggest difference between the people that are attending her events and the Sarah Russell Rodriguez's events are Francesca Hong has a bunch of 20-something they thems, she its.
And Sarah Rodriguez has a lot of just Social Security Americans.
Exactly.
Which I love. I love our Social Security Americans.
And maybe they can knock doors in their retirement communities, but they're not going outside to knock. They haven't been outside since Cheers ended.
Yeah. There's something to be said about, and I'll say this to anybody: never underestimate the grassroots. Never. Money, like, you can never just count them out. And so Francesca Hong, and I kind of admired the fact that she's going to see this through to the end. Mm-hmm. She doesn't really care. She's going to go out doing it her way, and if that means winning, great. If losing, so be it. But you never want to underestimate that. So Mandela is kind of seen as he's not even seen really as establishment. He's kind of seen as this, like, used
This
car.
This
that
also ran
want.
this failed candidate for statewide office already, who was a liability to Tony Evers in his first term. Yeah, I think we saw it in the black newspaper in Milwaukee. Mandela, please don't run. We saw it in the New York Times. We saw it in the Wisconsin Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. They didn't want him to run, and now he's here, and now he's mucking it up and not running away with it. So maybe they were right.
Maybe they were.
Yep.
So there's a lot to take away, but obviously Francesca Hong leading, the memes will continue.
Yeah.
This is good. I can't really meme Mandela Barnes leading in a poll. Like, yeah, we've all seen the video of him, assaulting a journalist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good, Oppo, but
it's
old.
And out of the other candidates, I don't know who else is going to lead in a poll. I mean, we have David Crowley, who's was polling pretty low there, and went on a Karen-esque rant because the USA hockey team, after winning an amazing gold medal last Sunday morning, he decided to drop an immediate anti-American rant because they were meeting with Trump and got a call from him through Kash Patel because Kash Patel was partying with them, and hell yeah, that looked awesome. And
Sarah Rodriguez did the same thing, and it's like, can you guys just not talk? Like, can you guys not be insufferable for 2 seconds? Just let them enjoy. Like, let us enjoy two. I mean, come on. When are we going to have the men's and women's gold medal back? It's so unlikely considering, our history with hockey. And it's not that it's been bad, but it's just hard to do both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also the fact that I thought it was interesting, there was the cross tabs on the poll showed that Crowley was obviously very, very well known in Milwaukee County. Mm-hmm. You're telling me this for the first time. A Milwaukee County executive, very well known in Milwaukee, not known anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact this healthcare story, the more I think about that, I think Crowley's cooked. I think the campaign has not been run well. The messaging has just not been great.
He's being forced by the they that's his comms director to go into a hidden room and record these videos on, against men's hockey until he's released.
Well, and then did you see his merch drop?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
just
all like
cringe.
Healthcare is a human right, which, like, that's not like a new talking point.
No.
But I can just tell the media and comms route that they went with Crowley's campaign is just, I think, completely backwards to what he should be doing if he wants to win. And it's just, it's hard to pinpoint, and I wish I could use my words a little bit harder, more intentional, because there's just something off. And I think that cake is baked for him.
Yep.
I think the only viable people right now are Sarah Rodriguez, Mandela, and Francesca Hong.
Okay. So you're completely done with Kelda. And I am too. Be clear. You're completely done with.
If we look at the polling, she was polling at 1%.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't think that. I think if you're Kelda, you throw your support behind somebody and hope that they win, and then you can get a department position.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's only running because she hates being a state senator, and Mark Pocan hasn't kicked the bucket yet. And she can't win statewide. So she's just running to get her name out there.
She's just trying to audition for the next job.
Right. So. I think, Missy Hughes, I've said this before, I think she missed her opportunity to run against EVO a cycle or two ago. That would have been her chance. And now she's, again, failing at trying to carve out that moderate lane.
I don't know.
Joel Brennan's only support is with a handful of very rich people.
Although I do give him credit. He is trying to get his name in the headlines. He's been attacking Trump for, like the election stuff. And so I don't necessarily think, I don't want to count them completely down and out, but I can see them trying at the very least.
Did you see that he put out a press release announcing he had a campaign manager? Which either means it was very confusing to me, because usually, the staff aren't the story. And maybe you think you're flexing
if the staff is the story, it's usually a bad one.
Yeah. And maybe you think you're flexing with the Madison donor class, but that's his base anyways. So no one outside of that is really going to pay attention. And then that either implies that he had a previous campaign manager that he got rid of, or for the first several months of his campaign,
he just didn't have anybody. And just had an intern or
either one of those is bad.
Yeah. He clearly has enough money.
Right.
I don't know. It's just a little bizarre. I think I would like to say it's the latter, where he just hired he just hired someone, and he had someone kind of maybe step into the role.
A GC that was going to take a step back and kind of look big picture.
Yeah. Maybe, I was even thinking even lower,
just a couple comms people that run.
Yeah. Basically a couple comms people that do a little extra work or something.
Well, be interesting to see if Francesca can keep that lead up in a third poll coming up. But yeah, I think you're right. There's the viability of several of those candidates is coming to an end, whether they believe it or not. But we're also coming to a point where, 6 weeks from now, they're going to be circulating nomination signatures, and that's
going to get very real very quickly.
That's your point of no return. That's, you get your name on that ballot. It's going to be very hard to get it off if you decide to withdraw from the race in June or July because you don't have a path. And then, we can always continue to advocate for Operation Chaos 2.0, which says, hey, Republicans, we're united with Tom Tiffany. Let's check a box for some. And you could honestly, throw a dart at and just pick one of them. There's no one that we want more than anyone else. I think you could just throw a dart, and if it drives down the top line number and drives up some of the more obscure candidates, Brett Halsey, let's have fun with it. But other stuff in that Marquette Law poll, it's interesting, is that a 60 record. So they did some issue and policy polling, and it says a record 60% of voters prioritize reducing property taxes over increasing K-12 school funding with 40%, and 57% would vote against a local school tax referendum. So what that tells me is I think the Republican message on schools is getting out there, and that's we have a large level of K-12 funding, highest record levels, and we have some of the lowest black achievement in the country. States that we used to make fun of for being backwards on education and the bottom of the barrel are now at the top. They call it the Mississippi Miracle. And now it's, the Wisconsin brain drain, as we fail to educate people to even read at grade level.
So the response to all this was interesting. So our resident comms person for the governor, Britt Cuddeback, had a nice little statement. Said, about this question said, and that question has been phrased as a false dichotomy for all of its all, if not most, of those 14 years, which isn't how school funding works in this state. Legislative policy exists. Options exist that both help fund schools and lower property taxes. It's a policy decision to do otherwise. Yeah, so we understand that you can do both. Like, we're not idiots. But it gets the general sentiment that people are a little tapped out when it comes to funding schools, and they don't necessarily see, like, I don't think anyone would have problems giving money to schools if they're seeing like a major return on investment. Right. And that's not to say that there aren't schools. Like, I know it state politics, it's like, oh, public school bad. You're
painting with a broad brush.
Yeah, but I'm sure that there are plenty of good, and there are, because I mean, clearly not every school is failing, but there are enough questionable schools or school districts that make it, pause, just pause. And I think that's fair. So I think it's a complete misnomer when they say this stuff.
It is, because what Britt doesn't seem to understand is that whenever a school board is trying to go to referendum, how do they pitch it? They say, well, it's only $100 tax increase on a house valued at $300,000. Like, they're trying to pitch these ways to spin it to say, like, oh, your taxes aren't really going to go up that much. So what do people associate school funding with? Property tax increases, because that's exactly what it's increased when they levy these referendum.
Yeah. Now, I will give Britt some credit here, because I'm not a complete hack here. Polling, yes, you can pretty much poll any question and get the answer you want if you phrase it the right way. Now, do I think Marquette Law Poll is doing? I don't think they're intentionally trying to screw public schools. We're going to phrase it in a way that really screws them over. But the poll never lies. The questions can lie, but the actual outcomes don't lie. And it does show that there is, at the very least, there is a sentiment that people are just kind of tapped out.
There's referendum fatigue.
Yes.
100%.
I 100% believe that. And I don't think that's controversial to say.
No.
And the Democrats even say that too, but they couple it with referendum fatigue equals we need to give more state aid to basically say, which basically just which way do you want to get screwed? Do you want to get screwed?
You're going.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Do you want to get screwed directly via referendum, or do you want to get screwed just from the state?
Yep.
At least with the referendum, you get an input at the very least. That's how they want to talk about local control. Well, for better or for worse, the referendum is somewhat of a local control mechanism, whereas the state level, it's kind of like imposed.
Exactly. So. And, I think even in those good school districts, you still have moments where, something gets out of hand. There's some fleeting progressivism that is in these communities that, maybe don't necessarily agree with it. So, yeah, there's a lot of school districts that are truly failing, and there's a lot that are like barely keeping their heads above water. And as we saw, the other thing about this is I think taxpayers now may have a bit more sense to be like, well, where's the money going? WMC had the thing the other day, we talked about it in our last episode that, the state of Wisconsin's lost like 65,000 K-12 students, and schools have added 6,000 new bureaucrats, non-teachers. They've lost teachers. They've lost 2,500 teachers. They're adding these bureaucrats. You're adding a third and fourth vice principal. And, I talked to a friend who works in a nearby public school district. And, sometimes they'll be at one school and someone will show up and they start ordering them around or start talking to them. And they're like, who the hell is this guy? And then the other guy says, I don't know, but they got a branded van, and they're, some assistant deputy superintendent for DEI or whatever. Like you have too many bureaucrats. And I think that's a fair question for taxpayers to ask.
Well, and I think even conservative, and I say this loosely, conservative school districts, I mean, there are slightly more conservative school districts, or they're just not maybe anything left of basically,
Shorewood.
Yeah, then that's considered conservative. I don't think they'll ever say no to more money to work with. So I can't imagine a superintendent saying, no, we're not going to take the money.
No, it's what they're using it for. Like, sure. It's easy. You would poll this question. You run the question after it that says, are public school teachers paid enough? Yes or no? Should they be paid more? Yes or no? You're going to get an overwhelming yes.
It's going to be like 80 or 90% of people.
Yeah, because they should be if they're good, but also maybe you shouldn't have 6,000 new bureaucrats, and maybe instead of, again, those third or fourth vice principals and assistant to the superintendent, and put it in a teacher salary, add it to the teacher salary.
And this goes, and this is, I think there's going to be a fight over, obviously, funding schools that goes on to the future, especially with the demographic changes that are going to continue to happen in Wisconsin. But ultimately, a lot of this is going to be done at the local level, and there has to be local buy-in for things to actually change. Mm-hmm. But we could get into that more, but I'll just leave it there.
Yep. So other things that came out of this poll, top voter concern is the economy. It's inflation, cost of living. 70% are very concerned about inflation, and 34% rank it as their most important issue. And 64% favor deporting undocumented immigrants.
I'm sorry, undocumented?
Well, that's what they pulled out of the thing. I'm just reading straight from the poll.
That's fair. We'll allow it just this one time. Well, and of course, the immigration polling was interesting because, 64 said they're in favor of deportations, but then 41% were in favor of just deporting people, or 41 were in favor of deporting people that had been here for a long time with no criminal record.
Yeah.
And again, this is the thing with polling. It's all how you phrase stuff. You can learn tons of stuff from polls, regardless of how crap they are. And the thing that you can, and this is this is nothing new. This has happened in multiple polls. Having the quote no criminal record softens the image of the illegal. Oh, they're not criminals, therefore I don't necessarily know if they have to go. But this is then a messaging problem. You have to educate the voters to say that those people are in fact also criminals
because they came over illegally.
Now, did they commit murder or rape or sexual assault?
They're not drunk drivers that kill Wisconsinites. They're not semi drivers that drive on the wrong side of the road and kill people.
They're not that. However, that doesn't mean that they didn't break laws to get here. And I know that might be it's not a nuanced argument to me, but the Democrats like to make it a nuanced argument. But the point being is, I know we like to think that immigration is our breadwinner, and it is in many respects. But it is about how you message things. If the Democrats just say, in a general, now I don't think Francesca Hong's going to soften her stance on immigration. If she were the nominee,
she might put "fuck ICE" on her yard signs.
She might, and she'll probably gain a lot of votes, but she might also lose a ton more. And
especially in the Hispanic community.
It does show a lane, though, that if messaged correctly, the Democrats could not get totally beat over the head with immigration. So, just something to consider going forward, especially if the Democrats elect and I say this loosely, a moderate, which is basically anyone that isn't Francesca.
Yeah, and don't hear what we're not saying when we say moderate and we describe Missy Hughes or Joel Brennan as the moderate candidate. We know they're Trojan horses for every progressive policy. They're going to hire or retain a lot of Governor Evers' staff who are, again, dyed-in-the-wool, leftist, deranged, woke white women with SSRI prescriptions. They're going to, you look at, was it Abigail Spanbauer out of Washington, or excuse me, out of Virginia. She campaigned as that moderate, intelligent CIA agent, and what has she done? Her track record in the first 10 weeks is scary for any conservative state, or any state like Wisconsin who's going to have to choose a governor this fall. And you either get, again, taxes on dog walkers and everything in between, or you get a rock solid conservative in Tom Tiffany. So last one out of this poll that I want to talk about very briefly. Surprising to me, actually, that a majority of Wisconsin registered voters at 64%, so basically 2 out of 3, oppose legalized online sports betting, while 34% support it. Opposition crosses party lines with 61% of Republicans, 66% of Democrats, and 74% of independents are against expansion. I'm surprised it's that high.
Yeah, I was not expecting this at all.
Yeah.
Maybe this is Wisconsin's just based anti-gambling roots that they've had. But it's kind of odd because you would have assumed that these are like super majority percentages for a quote unquote vice, where we've basically normalized every other vice pretty much. And, we can have nuanced arguments about all kinds of stuff. We've talked about marijuana and all that stuff, and we can talk about that more later. But this is kind of an out of the blue. I would think there would be overwhelming majority for just legalizing,
Yeah.
or maybe a simple majority, maybe mid to low 50s or something. So,
but 64%
yeah,
opposing.
64 again, based Wisconsinites. I'm one of the 64. So,
yeah, I was expecting a much closer one. I actually thought legalized sports betting would be in favor, and maybe again it's the echo chamber of fantasy sports that and watching traditional sports that I see gaming ads all the time, and thought
Prize
more people,
Picks,
Clashy,
DraftKings, there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
And look, when that season comes around, I'll give you my DraftKings picks every week to help you lose all of your money because I'm terrible at it. But that being said, maybe that expansion.
Maybe you're just the resident inverse Kramer, and they'll just pick against you.
It's not a bad idea. We should try that come this fall. I'll give you my picks. You pick other people.
I'll just pick the opposite.
Exactly.
I'll just
we'll see who wins, and then we'll be sponsored by DraftKings in the end.
Which I don't know. I don't know if I love that. I don't know if I could ethically take money from DraftKings.
Yeah.
But if anyone else would like to sponsor us, we have
please reach out.
We have slots open.
All our slots.
All of our slots are open currently.
We will open slots for you.
Yes. So feel free to contact us at our email, which I believe is newfashionpod@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. So, Shadow Gov, you want to walk us through a couple of the responses to this poll from friend of the show, Dan Schaefer?
Yeah. Well, I just really the main one I wanted to talk about was, and I think I know what he's doing because I would have done it too probably if I were him. And, he's trying to sell subscriptions, so he's trying to slang a little bit of mudslinging. I don't blame him, but he was talking about the polling that talked about Tom Tiffany, where again, similar to the Democrat side of things, a bunch of Republicans aren't paying attention to the governor's race. Go figure. It's spring. People aren't paying attention to the spring election, let alone the November election. And it showed something like 60% of Republican voters are undecided in the primary. Well, I hate to break it to those 60%, but you're going to have one choice in November, okay? And it's going to be Tom Tiffany, okay? That's it. That is, sealed and delivered, okay? That's who it's going to be. But Dan Schaefer said, Tom Tiffany's the only viable gubernatorial candidate for the GOP. He just got Trump's endorsement, and yet more than 60% of Republican voters are undecided in the primary. Embarrassingly bad poll for him. A testament to how right-wing the political media has gotten in Wisconsin, that this has not jumped out as a top Marquette poll story. The level of,
delusion.
Well, no. This is, I'm giving him credit here. This is not delusion. He knows exactly what he's doing, because this is what I would have done. Anything for a headline, anything to stir consternation in our side. Now, is he reaching? Absolutely. He is reaching 100%. Just because 60% of people don't know Tom yet.
Yeah, that's because 60% of Wisconsinites aren't political degens.
They're also 60% of Wisconsinites are still waking up from hibernation.
Yeah.
So just get a couple people to, get into spring, we're still cooped up in the houses, although we still got a few nice days. We've had a few, and it's, that little tease of first and second spring. And then we get second or third winter.
And now the real ice fishermen are back out on the lake that was wide open a couple of days ago. Yeah.
They're back on. And then we'll get the one snow in April, like middle of April, and then it'll be done, And God help us if there's snow in May. But so this is Dan just saying he's trying to, he's rage baiting me, and it was successful. It was successful. Now, did I respond? Absolutely not. But maybe I will. Okay. But let's just put that out there. The media is not quote unquote right wing. Okay. The right wing media has not, or the media has not gotten more right wing. I would say there's been more media that is right wing that has entered the space, maybe balancing things out. But I don't think the Journal Sentinel has all of a sudden.
They've never had a conservative writer for them. I mean, they might have just gotten,
that we're aware of.
I think the writers may have just gotten a bit stupider, but
So yeah, the media is not more right wing. Tom Tiffany is going to be the primary victor come August 10th, 8th. I don't know what day it is this year.
Yeah, I think he was trying to troll someone into convince. Tommy Thompson should run, and we've said no to that many times. And we said no. There's 2 pods that we've had that were dedicated to that.
See, the thing about Dan's trolling is that I appreciate it because it's so hacky, and what we're doing with Francesca is actually got legs, though. Like the person that's running against Tom Tiffany, nice guy, young kid, but I don't think he probably has the resources to do it. I think he was polling at 2%, which is probably basically just a rounding error. Okay. Francesca's got 11%, and it might not be 20 or 25 or 30, but she is technically leading. So you have bigger problems on your side than we do. So thank you for your attention to this matter.
So some of the things we didn't get to last week wanted to highlight was the 7th Congressional District GOP primary got a bit more competitive, maybe. So obviously with our episode last week, spending our entire time talking about Speaker Vos and his unmatched legacy, didn't get to a couple stories. So
my bandwidth was pretty much maximized by only Robin Vos and Robin Vos edits, and I could not think about anything else other than Robin Vos and how sad it's going to be when we'll be entering, AV or after Vos, AV1. We'll just start counting dates and years after Robin Vos's exit. But we had to compartmentalize and put this off for 1 week. But the primary is still many months away.
But there were 2 new candidates that declared. Nina Baum announced her candidacy, and I want to note that her name is spelled Niina. And this is the second time I thought a candidate were misspelling their own name, Ryan Sternad. Outwardly, she proclaims herself to be an independent-minded moderate Republican and is refusing contributions from corporate PACs. She certainly has something that many other candidates seem to be lacking right now, and that's a deep-rooted connection to the district. One cool thing about her is she represented Team USA as a dog musher and earning silver and bronze medals in the World Championship dog mushing competitions.
Based.
But it's in a R+11 district, and that's the Cook POV, and I think Tom Tiffany won it with 22%, so that's probably undershooting what it actually is. And it's not one that would necessarily support a moderate candidate. I think she's probably a Democrat that's in this race that is trying to speak Republican. Now, I would have said I'd support her candidacy if she were running for, Wisconsin's 73rd Assembly District, which is Superior, Ashland, and Bayfield. But she does seem to be a Democrat plant. Folks who have done a deep dive into her social media background shows she criticized President Trump's administration on social media, and she has either dodged or ignored several questions on what positions she is moderate on or what Republican candidates she's supported in the past. Other candidate that declared in that race was Kevin Hermaning. We kind of knew that was coming. It's been talked about for a while. He announced a bid that same week. He's a Wausau businessman and former GOP chairman, and as a young Marine, Kevin Hermaning spent 444 days as a hostage in Iran. But he was criticized for drawing attention to his candidacy from 40 years ago in a 1980 Miracle on Ice post with regards to the U.S. hockey team winning gold. So Kevin said, the post said, Kevin took his shot at Congress nearly 40 years ago, but voters told him he wasn't ready. He listened, he served, he built a life of experience and leadership. And I know what he's trying to do is kind of take a jab at Michael Alfonso, who is too young, can be considered too young and not ready. But for me, like calling attention to a race you ran 40 years ago, just I think ages you up significantly. Like that makes me feel like this guy's in his 70s or 80s. I think he's 63 or 65. But certainly, it makes you look really old if you're talking about something from 40 years ago.
And to be fair, the district is pretty old too, so that might be endearing, I should say. It's a bit of a weird. First of all, I don't think we have to beat around the bush. Nina is a Democrat. She's a Democrat. I'm sorry, but my vernacular, I've read enough tweets, I've read enough news stories, enough press releases to see this language is just a little too leftist coded, I
was gonna say that.
Yeah, and you just pick up on things. You're like, this is what I would say if I was running as a Republican and I was secretly a Democrat. So at least I have to admit though, the dog mushing thing is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, good for you. That's God bless you. That's cool stuff. I just don't want you in Congress.
No, but again, where I would like her, again, if she was even remotely okay with being a Republican, and some of those districts, we just said we want 99 Republican representatives in the Assembly and 99 in the Assembly, but they can't all be Robin Vos's. They can't all be strong conservatives. You sometimes in those races, you need those squishy moderates that are, as the William F. Buckley rule is the most conservative candidate you can elect in some place like Superior, Ashland, and Bayfield in the 73rd Assembly District. She might be a good candidate there. So maybe someone can convince her, take a shot at state politics before you try to jump to that national level. But no, I think what she's really trying to do is get every Democrat in the Northwoods of Wisconsin to vote for her over all of the other candidates and sneak through the primary and do
it's so divided that you could maybe, but again, and no offense to Kevin Hermanane, but like getting in after a Trump endorsement is a bold strategy.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see if it pays off, Cotton.
There are not many endorsements, Trump endorsements that have been defeated. Mm-hmm. And usually there's a different element, but if we're talking like just a straight up primary, Trump usually wins. Mm-hmm. One of them he didn't win was the Robin Vos recall or the Robin Vos primary. Mm-hmm. So we're talking like that level of dedication, work, and there's just very few people that are willing to do that. Yep. Now, Kevin, still great guy, good story. Great story. I think if I'm Kevin though, you get in months ago.
Yeah,
but.
I'm partial candidates that have military experience. TVO is a SEAL. When Bill Berrien was, not imploding and crashing in on himself, I like the Navy SEAL aspect there too. Kevin being a Marine who, was held hostage in Iran, like it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. That should resonate with a lot of voters. Mm-hmm. But yeah, after the Trump endorsement,
not sure what the path is and what the voter. I mean, there's got to be some kind of polling or something that you've looked at. Like you would think that, right? But maybe someone he said, regardless of what happens, I'm going to run. Mm-hmm. And I guess more power to you. It's what you want to do, but it's not what I would have done. But
so, next topic I want to bring up. It's a little dense, and I know if you're hanging with us this long, thank you. MacIver Institute has done a fantastic job exposing the Wisconsin Department of Health Services for awarding a 10-year contract to a company called Public Partnerships LLC as the sole fiscal agent for the IRIS program, which is a self-directed Medicare long-term care initiative that manages over $1.4 billion in taxpayer funds annually. Previously handled by 3 agents, the program will now consolidate under PPL, which is acquired by a private equity firm, DW Healthcare Partners. The piece highlighted potential conflicts of interest, knowing that DHS and PCG co-sponsored a panel on home-based healthcare at a conference shortly after the RFP submission deadline in August. PPL's history includes significant operation failures in states like New York and New Jersey, including multiple payroll delays, underpayments to caregivers, technical glitches, multiple lawsuits, including class actions, and advocacy group complaints that participants risk losing essential care. PPL's checkered past demonstrates incompetence in managing similar programs with document failures such as unpaid caregivers, and would harm vulnerable IRIS recipients who rely on the program for self-directed care. But what's more interesting or more concerning about this is the SEIU has raised ties to this company, raised concerns about backdoor unionization of Wisconsin's 74,000 home healthcare workers, potentially bypassing Act 10's restrictions on public sector unions and driving up costs through mandated wage hikes. So we just talked about how Tony Evers is not worried about fraud and refusing to turn this, those data over, the food share data over. You look at this in the Medicare program. Not only is the state of Wisconsin now opening itself up to fraud, it's also opening itself up to union corruption as SEIU tries to backdoor a service, industry union forced on their employees.
Well, I got to say, this is pretty clever. If, this is the kind of stuff that it's, normal people, just can't. I have the time to look this out. And I probably would have never found this either if it weren't for some shrewd people over at MacIver. So you have obviously a situation where they're essentially bypassing Act 10 to potentially, obviously it's not legit yet, but there's a lot of, circumstantial evidence to show that there might be a little wink and a nod here. Oh, we'll use this company that also has some very strong ties to labor groups, and maybe, just maybe, we can all benefit from this. So, I mean, certainly concerning at the very least, but, Tony Evers, DHS, are they going to do anything? No, probably not. And that's the unfortunate thing with our situation is, I mean, what are we supposed to do? There's only so, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some oversight done by the legislature, but as far as administrative rules, legislature can't do much on that. It's we just kind of have to lay down and accept this, at least right now.
No, what we're going to have to do is, I think this is something that's prime for a longer topic on the Substack that we're going to try to write more on, and hopefully this story gets picked up by a couple other news sources, and maybe those loyal stenographers of the Democratic Party that are forced to listen to our show.
Absolutely, they're not picking up this.
Okay. Well, I remain optimistic.
There are certain stories where I think they would. This one, no. As soon as you get from like surface layer to you have to peel back an onion layer. No,
but they're
done.
I said it was a dense topic. It's a lot for our listeners to understand, but I know they're sharp people and they're certainly much smarter than journos.
But the IRIS program, just so people understand, the IRIS program, I believe, is basically subsidizing
home healthcare.
Yeah, in-home healthcare
for people that you don't want them
at the hospital,
or don't want them in
nursing
senior
home
care.
Stuff,
any of those.
It keeps them in their home, but this subsidizes the workers' wages to take care of them. So, I mean, that's just kind of the basics of that. And of course, everyone likes to, the Democrats love to talk about healthcare, the price of healthcare. Well, if they figure out a way to basically get around Act 10 and unionize and drive up wages, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be paid, what they're worth. I'm not saying that at all.
They're going to expect some of that money to be kicked up in union dues.
Oh, yeah, big time. And then the union dues back to the Democrat Party. Exactly. And then we're just back to, 2010 called.
Right.
It wants its talking points back.
Right. It's federal money going to the Democratic Party. It's what they try to do with NGOs. They do it with unions, and they're going to try and do it in Wisconsin here.
It's like all the USAID money dried up, and all of a sudden the Democrats are having their worst fundraising year.
Yeah.
In a long time.
Shocked.
Interesting how essentially the U.S. government has been funneling money to NGOs, which then funnel money back to politicians to then enrich themselves further. Maybe the entire system just needs to be broken up, but who knows? Meanwhile, I just wrote an article about why we need to preserve institutions. Meanwhile, me advocating for destroying certain institutions. But
well, that's a good topic for another time. I have some thoughts there too. But final thing I want to talk about tonight, Josh Kaul seems to straight up be not having a good time. Normally I wouldn't. So it starts off by saying about the state of the tribes, and normally I wouldn't comment on the state of the tribes. It's mostly just an exercise.
What's the state of the tribes?
It's an exercise in guilt and shaming by a tribal leader asking for free stuff and increasing tribal gaming revenue because of the sins of several generations ago. Personally, I think the GOP
actually sins. What did we do to the Indians?
Alleged sins? Then,
first of all, I think we've talked about this, but Andrew Jackson did nothing wrong. Okay, he did nothing wrong. No, this is actually serious. And Andrew Jackson gets a bad rap for the Indian Removal Act. Did you know though that he fought them in Alabama and stuff in the South and whatnot, or Louisiana, I should say, but he didn't actually remove them. It was Van Buren that came in after the fact, and that's when you get the Trail of Tears. Okay, Andrew Jackson didn't actually. He created the law, or he signed the law, but he actually didn't actually use the enforcement mechanism. So Andrew Jackson did nothing wrong. Van Buren didn't do anything wrong either. But
if you're a Wisconsin Democrat and you're being criticized during the State of the Tribes, you're doing something really wrong.
Yeah, not a good look.
The State of the Tribes address was on February 10th, delivered by Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indian Chairwoman Nicole Boyd. She criticized the Department of Justice under his leadership for reducing the number of narcotics investigators assigned in northern Wisconsin from 4 in 2013 to 0. As a result, it has caused incredible delays in investigations, resulting in many unnecessary deaths. So even for an organization, for tribes in the state to criticize a Democrat, that means you're doing a really, really bad job. Secondly, Mary Felskowski and Corey Tomczak put together this video that was amplified by one of the greatest Americans, Comfortably Smug, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
Josh Kaul.
New York University.
Michael Bloomberg.
Privately funded attorneys.
What do they all have in common?
Since 2019, Attorney General Josh Kaul has hired attorneys funded by Michael Bloomberg
to carry out progressive priorities using the Wisconsin Department of Justice.
All being coordinated by New York University.
Not authorized by the legislature,
but granted full state power.
Now, the Senate Special Committee is asking the hard questions.
Is this transparent?
Who do these attorneys answer to?
Is it above board?
The answers matter for oversight, for governance, for transparency, and for the future of Wisconsin.
The investigation is just beginning.
Before we get into the depth of that,
I'm a cowboy nationalist, by the way.
Like Senator Tomchuk.
Yeah, I just like the cowboy hat.
Yeah, he's a cool looking dude, and again, 10 out of 10 work from the Senate Republican comms team for this.
We just don't see many cowboy hats, in Wisconsin. So I always like seeing one.
Yeah. So what the senators are getting at there is Josh Kaul is currently having a left-wing climate activist, Michael Bloomberg, pay for a special assistant attorney general focused on environmental enforcement. Karen Heinemann's position is funded by the New York University's State Energy and Environmental Impact Center, which raises concerns about outside influence for state prosecutors. The aim of the State Emergency and Environmental Impact Center was to hire lawyers in blue states to push back on Donald Trump's deregulations in his first term, and the center is still funding these attorneys now. The plaintiffs for this argue that this is an arrangement violates Wisconsin law, denies due process and equal protection, and allows special interests to wield prosecutorial power, particularly in cases against farmers like wetland violations. An ethics complaint by former DOJ employee and friend of the show, Lane Ruland, echoes these claims, describing it as improperly accepting gifts from private funders. Allowing out-of-state billionaires to instigate control of investigations or prosecutions of Wisconsinites is unacceptable, the Republicans wrote in a memo. The Attorney General's duty is to represent and serve the people of Wisconsin, not accommodate the bidding of agenda of out-of-state billionaire partisan activists who buy their way into our DOJ offices. So good work by the state Senate leaders trying to investigate Josh Kaul and the DOJ.
Native Wisconsinites, beware of foreign influence. This is what this is. In what world do Wisconsin constitutional offices get to just bring in privately funded positions into state governor and they get full access to prosecution powers of Wisconsin people? That is an actual insane position to take. And, I would hope every other state would take offense to having, the Democrats love to talk about billionaires and, the billionaires. Of course, Bernie Sanders doesn't talk about millionaires anymore because he is one. But the billionaires are still, catch a lot of ire from the Democrats, except for when they're funding their little pet projects in our state. Now it's one position, and I'm not gonna pretend that this is absolutely existential. It is wrong, and it should be called out. And I'm glad the Senate Republicans called this out. It's not widespread, and let's hopefully we keep it this way. We make an example of this, and maybe we should talk to some other legal experts to determine what we can actually do about this.
Besides following the money. Yeah,
besides following the money. So, but if we're just speaking in common sense terms here, in no way should a New York University privately funded position be able to prosecute Wisconsinites like any other publicly funded position, because it's not publicly funded.
Exactly.
So it's just a bit odd, and I don't know. I'm assuming, Bloomberg has done this to other states. I mean, are they doing this across the country? I have to imagine they're not just targeting Wisconsin, but they're targeting everywhere as well.
They're hitting those blue and purple states, trying to push back on Trump's deregulations, and again, not a position that should be in the Wisconsin DOJ. So with that, folks, hope you enjoy the episode. Again, make sure to check us out on Substack, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you get your podcasts. Wherever you are, make sure to like, share, subscribe, drop us that 5-star, and have a great Monday.